So I'm so used to starting everything by saying I'm Peter Rosenblum, but I think in this crowd, well, I think I know most of you, and those of you I don't, I'm Peter Rosenblum, and I head the Human Rights Clinic, and I'm the faculty co-director of the Human Rights Institute here. And tonight is a night that we've been looking forward to for a long time in various ways. It's the excitement of being able to recognize an important transition in the life of a project that we've been working on, a case that we've been working on, with someone who has become so near and dear to us that she really has been a part of our teaching and our learning over the last 6 years. And that, of course, is Jessica Lenahan, who's over here, and I just want to make sure we'll all see her and know, because I think she might step out of the room in a moment, but she's going to be back here.
I won't do the video, and I'll be back.
We do a lot of great things at the Human Rights Clinic, and we always feel that we're taking risks and trying something new and challenging ourselves. We don't take anything for granted. And so when we work with a client, which is a rarity for us, we make things pretty hard for her too. We put her through the ringer. And any of you who have been students, and I look out across the room and I see people from the last 6 years of the Human Rights Clinic, many of you I'm sure will remember the times that we've had with Jessica in the room working through some really grueling questions about her life that she's shared with us, and then her experience in working with lawyers and advocates around the world. And at every moment, I'm sure you felt as I did, that we were being allowed into something that we didn't really have the right to be present for. We hadn't earned it, and she was allowing us to be there and sharing the process with us, where theoretically we were supposed to be doing something good for her. But I think we all knew at every moment that the first beneficiaries were ourselves in that process. And we had to think next about how, while being the beneficiaries, we could continue to give to her. And she has made it easy for us over the years by looking forward to the time that she spends with her students, as she's referred to them, and by coming back to us and telling us pretty clearly when we're out of line in terms of what we're doing. And so I just think, the experience, the opportunity to be able to pause, because there's been a great victory in this case, and we have to recognize that. And that victory has come about because of the work of great lawyers, the work of the ACLU, because of the work of the students in support of Bettinger-Lopez, who's kept the case alive as well during all of those years. But even from the beginning, we all knew that taking this case to the Inter-American Commission was only one step in a process, and that victory was not going to be the solution. And in terms of the lives of people engaged in the case, victory might even be a problem of a letdown of what do you do next, of how do you move forward. And so the events that we've had today have been an opportunity to start thinking about the moving forward, or to see how, in fact, it's already very much being planned for, and it's been part of the excitement. And nevertheless, a time to pause and to recognize the importance of what we've been through. So there are many people in the room who are going to be recognized in the course of the evening, many who have contributed to this case. But mostly tonight is about Jessica and about her students. And so I hope her students will all be sticking around. We want to make sure that you're all here and we can reconnect as the evening progresses. Before we go on to have some talks, we're going to hear a few words from Carrie, from Lenora, and then from Chinyere, Ezie, one of the students who worked on the case. But first we're going to show an advocacy film that was put together in the same way as so much has been put together in this case, by a lot of love and collaboration, a certain amount of argument, and eventually, I think, a great production. And in this case, produced by two documentary filmmakers who are here with us this evening and who have played a really important role in the case, and I think with Jessica and the more recent chapters of her advocacy struggle. So for the next 8 minutes, we're going to be showing the advocacy film on Jessica Lenahan.
Hi, I'm Jessica Lenahan. I'm the petitioner in the case of Jessica Gonzales versus the United States of America. My life's work is to educate Americans that protection from domestic violence is our human right. I was born and raised in Pueblo, Colorado. I'm Native American and Latina. I met Simon Gonzales when we were children. Through the years, we saw each other off and on and eventually got married in 1990. We had 3 daughters, Rebecca, Catherine, and Leslie Gonzales. Slowly but surely just became very controlling in what I wore and who I spoke to, and it slowly crept in over the 10.5 years that we had a marriage.
And he started acting really erratic, and threats of wanting to kill himself and threatening his neighbors, I'm going to die, you're going to die, somebody's going to die.
He actually tried to hang himself in the garage in front of my children at one time. When you're a victim, you try to portray this life like it's fine, like there's nothing wrong. But when my children were starting to become affected and become frightened of him, I just decided that we're just going to tell the truth. And no matter how painful or shameful I felt at that time, that it was really necessary to do whatever I needed to do as a mother to protect my children. In 1999, I decided I needed a restraining order, that it just got so dangerous for the children. I went before the judge and explained what was going on within my home, and the judge realized that Simon was a danger to me and the children, and that he needed to not be a part of the home at all and needed to stay at least 100 yards from the household itself. On June 22nd, 1999, Simon violated the restraining order by kidnapping the girls from my front yard. I called the police, and dispatch was supposed to send a car out, and I waited hours before they came out, and I called again. I'd given the officers the restraining order when they arrived, and they decided that because Simon was their father, that the children would be fine and they didn't have to look for them. I shouldn't worry because they were with their father. But all in all, they just, throughout the evening, didn't look for them at all. They were very dismissive of any requests I made and belittling to me for even asking them for help. They called me ridiculous at one point. I contacted the police 9 times altogether, twice in person, and 7 times over the telephone. At 3:20 in the morning, Simon pulled up in front of the police station after buying a gun and opened fire on the police. And they fired back. Simon died, shot him dead. And then they found the bodies of my 3 children shot to death in the cab of the truck. Eventually, it went to the highest court in the land, which was the Supreme Court. The United States Supreme Court said that I had no constitutional right to police protection or enforcement of my restraining order. So if restraining orders are not enforced, then they're not worth the paper they're written on. I filed a case with the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights because my human rights were violated by Castle Rock, Colorado, for not enforcing a restraining order to protect my children and myself. And my human rights were also violated within the court system for not providing a remedy.
I deserve answers, and I deserve to know the truth. I want to know why the police ignored my calls for help. I've been asking these questions for 9 years. 9 long years. How long will it take for you to help me discover the truth? I know I cannot bring my children back from that night. The emptiness I feel when I remember my daughters and the great lives they might have lived. Nothing can bring them back. Nothing. What I can do, however, is to be a voice for the voiceless and women who are promised protection in America and then denied it in the moment they're in danger.
By deciding in my favor, the Inter-American Commission has recognized that the United States allows human rights violations to continue against women and children. These are the facts and the statistics in our country. 1.3 million women are physically assaulted in the United States by an intimate partner each year. Every day, approximately 3 women and 1 man are murdered in the United States by an intimate partner. Every year, 3.3 million children are exposed to violence against their mothers or their female caretakers. Every day, approximately 4 children die from violence in the home. There are preventative measures. I believe education starting from very young will prevent violence, domestic violence, violence against women. All in all, it's not up to the Commission to change the U.S. It's up to United States citizens to decide to change this world for themselves. They can give us all the tools, but we have got to be able to embrace and put them to use. Our society traditionally thought of domestic violence as something that happened behind closed doors and that it was nobody else's business. But it is our business, and it should be our government's business too. Our government can't turn a blind eye to this human rights violation. It's happening right under their noses. Our country has an obligation to stop domestic violence in its tracks.
Part of what's so powerful about that for all of us, and so true to Jessica and what she's been doing over these years, is her own engagement as an activist, an identification as an activist, and making that a part of her life and her work. So we're going to hear first from Carrie.
Well, wow, what an overwhelming moment to be here with so many people from so many generations and moments in my life personally and moments in this case. This room is just filled with the people that made this case a success, and I am so overwhelmed and humbled to be here with all of you. So thank you. First of all, thank you all, and most of all, thank you, Jessica, for bringing us to where we are today. So we've had a wonderful day of thinking about the place of Jessica's case in human rights mobilization and implementation of the decision and how we move things forward. But tonight is a moment of celebration. And we don't often have moments to just purely celebrate our work. We live in a moment that's quite difficult when thinking about achieving and realizing human rights. We're constantly feeling on the defensive, and we're constantly feeling like there's sometimes no end in sight. And this is a night that we have an end, we have a victory, we have a decision to celebrate that is just awesome. It's amazing. And it wouldn't be possible without the people who are in this room tonight, and most of all, it would not be possible without Jessica Lenahan. So today is a day that's really 7 years in the making, and I want to acknowledge all of the people in the room who really brought us to this moment. So Jessica, who I'm going to turn it over to in a moment, Jessica was awarded last week the Human Rights Hero Award from the U.S. Human Rights Fund, their first ever Human Rights Hero Award. And I must say, Jessica is a hero for me. She has been here and been the most resilient human rights activist and defender of her own rights and spokesperson for a movement, really. And we've seen that growing, and we're about to see that blossom into something even bigger and better and more exciting. And it couldn't be possible without you. So thank you for being my hero, and I think a hero for everybody in this room.
Not the troublemaker of troublemakers, right? I don't want
Yeah.
that to follow me. I heard that title the other day on some thing, and I was like, no, I don't like the sound of that one, but I've been labeled that a few times.
I didn't say you're not a troublemaker.
Yeah, I did. It's good trouble. Good trouble. Couldn't get into it without you. You know that big show. Troublemakers.
I'm the facilitator of the troublemaker. So in 2004, we talked this morning, and so I apologize for those in the room who where I'm repeating myself. But in 2004, when I had just started at the ACLU Women's Rights Project as a fellow, I had the good fortune and wonderful privilege of working there with Lenora Lapidus and my colleagues Emily Martin, Stephen Watt, who are in here today, and Sandra Park is now part of the ACLU Women's Rights Project. And we heard about 3 weeks into my fellowship that this case called Town of Castle Rock versus Jessica Gonzales was going up to the U.S. Supreme Court. And we wondered what the implications of that would be. We were quite nervous about what that meant, because we knew that this was not a particularly friendly Supreme Court to claims like Jessica's. And you saw in the video how the case built up to that moment. Castle Rock was a crushing blow in June of 2005, and many of us threw up our hands and said, oh my, this is the third in this trilogy of cases before the Supreme Court, where the Supreme Court is just systematically denying remedies and protections to individuals in Jessica's situation. And Lenora Lapidus, I remember her coming and saying, we've got to fight this, we've got to move forward, and it was really Lenora's vision for coordinating the amicus briefs in the case that went up to the Supreme Court, and then moving this forward and thinking about the Inter-American Commission process. And so thanks, Lenora, for making all of that possible. And so we embarked on a human rights odyssey, which really maybe began before the Inter-American Commission process, but certainly when we entered Inter-American land, it brought us to a new space. It brought us a new vocabulary for talking about the harms that Jessica suffered. It gave us the language of human rights, when before we were trying to define this thing that had happened in her life as a procedural due process violation. And all of a sudden, here we were talking about the right to life, the right to equality, the right to a remedy, fundamental human rights. And Jessica was there all the while leading the charge. And I want to make clear, and this is such an important lesson that Jessica always speaks much more eloquently than myself about, that this could not have been possible without Jessica. It was Jessica and her mother Tina Rivera and her brother Jay Rivera, who's in this room. Jay, could you raise your hand? Jay. It was this family that said, yes, all of you lawyers are saying that we've reached the end of the line, but no, we're not going to accept that. We can't stop now. We must move forward. How can we do that? How can we do that? And they pushed, and we lawyers with our narrow legal caps on said, sorry, Supreme Court, kind of highest place in the land. And it was really with the inspiration of Jessica and her family that we came together, had a collective brainstorming, and decided to move forward to the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights and reclaim this case as a human rights case and reclaim Jessica's tragedy as a human rights violation. Jessica's mother, I want to acknowledge her, Tina Rivera. She is no longer with us, but she's here with us in spirit today. And we feel her. We feel her presence often, and I feel her presence very much in this room today.
Did you have to go there?
I did.
Come on.
Today's her birthday.
Yes, it is my mother's birthday today. She would have been 68 today. Wow.
In one moment, I'm going to turn it over to you, and you can talk about that. That's very powerful. I want to just say that this morning we spent 4 hours putting our heads together for an incredibly inspirational and exciting and productive brainstorming about what implementation of the Inter-American decision means. And we know that there are places that we can take this, and it's a very exciting moment in the case. We've already seen real progress in this case and in what implementation means. I just want to end, before I pass it over to Jessica, again by acknowledging, in addition to my ACLU colleagues, my co-counsel and former colleagues at Columbia, Peter, of course, Risa Kaufman. Where's Risa? There's Risa, such an important part, the executive director of the Human Rights Institute and a driving force in this case as well. Cindy Suhu, who was formerly with the Institute, who was here earlier today.
In terms of the words, we're going to sit down for a minute and Lenora and Chinyere will speak before
Jessica. Okay.
She's going to finish.
Okay.
I'll go last today.
Okay, we're going to let Jessica
always first. So
top it
everyone
off.
should be first before me today.
And I'll go quickly because there's so many people who we want to make sure to give the floor to. But Joanne Camafford, Noreen Shaw, and Greta Moseson, who helped make this event possible today. So thank you all. I want to also acknowledge the clinic faculty, students, and staff who are in the room. Brenda Eberhardt, who's in the back of the room. Our beloved Brenda, we all know what we're talking about, those of us who've been in the clinic. Professor Suzanne Goldberg, the director of the Sexuality and Gender Clinic, and Professor Jeff Fagan, who's here in the back of the room. Professor Fagan submitted an expert report in Jessica's case on law enforcement, policing, and domestic violence, which formed such an important cornerstone and gave so much legitimacy to this case. We're now seeing a lot of the effects of his words, I think, in recent DOJ investigations into police departments throughout the country, and we've now learned that the DOJ now incorporates as part of its standard operating procedure an investigation into law enforcement response to domestic violence and sexual assault. And Jeff, you had something to do with that, so thank you. Julie Goldscheid is in the room. She's been such an important advisor for us. Lee Goodmark, Margaret Drew. If you all just raise your hands, we want to acknowledge you. You've been provided so much guidance to us throughout this case. And now, of course, the students. You are the ones who really made this possible, and we want to, at the end of this, have all of you come up and so that we can take a group shot. But if every student who worked on this case could please just wave their hand in the air. We've got Columbia Law students, University of Miami Law students in the room, and there's so many who are not here but here in spirit, so thank you.
From Los Angeles, it's really the students have been amazing.
It's absolutely incredible. So I'm now going to turn it over to Lenora Lapidus, but I just want to thank you again, Jessica, and Jay and your family. Thank you, Jessica, for being here and standing strong when it's not always easy, and being the face of a movement, really. We know that it takes its toll on you, and we appreciate you for all that you do.
I heard that.
You look lovely, and we're so proud of you, and we can't thank you enough, so thank you.
Hi, I really just wanted to take a couple minutes because this is such an important day, such an important moment, and such a wonderful celebration. And really, I just wanted to dedicate this to you, Jessica. I remember when Jessica first came to our office 7 years ago, she came with her attorney who had been representing her and was going to represent her in the Supreme Court. And we sat and we met and we thought about, is there a role for the ACLU to play? What is this case going to be about? And the thing that struck me so much was how articulate and clear-headed and bright Jessica was, and that I could tell from that very first minute that we met her that she was going to be a spokesperson on this issue, that she was going to be an advocate, and she was going to be in it until the end. And over the last 7 years, I have just been so impressed at every step of the way how she has done that, how you just always stepped up at sometimes the hardest moments and spoken what needed to be said. And you saw in the video one of the times when she testified before the Inter-American Commission, and you could see just how compelling she was and how the words that she said brought this all home to the commission members and to everyone who was watching. And she did that time and time again and made this real for everybody. And as you said yourself, you were a voice for the voiceless, and you continue to be that. And that is what, to me, has just been so moving and powerful over these 7 years. And there is absolutely no way that this case could have had the huge impact that it has had and will continue to have if we didn't have Jessica as the leading spokesperson and advocate on the case. So I really just wanted to take a minute to thank you, Jessica. Of course, thank Carrie for all the work getting this case going and thinking of going to the Inter-American Commission and agreeing that we weren't going to take the Supreme Court's decision as the final word here, and everyone that she worked with afterward at Columbia and now at Miami in just continuing to push month after month, year after year, because this fight is still ongoing. We won a major, major victory, and we're here to celebrate, and that's fantastic. But we are pushing on, and we're going to the next stage. And with Jessica at the helm, I know we're going to continue to have more and more successes. So thank you, Jessica.
So last we're going to hear, before Jessica, we're going to hear from Chinyere of the class of 2010.
Good evening, everyone. I'm very happy to be here on behalf of the Human Rights Clinic, but I'm not alone in the room, so I wanted to call up to the podium very briefly other members of the Human Rights Clinic and others who participated on this case, really briefly. I see a couple of you. Come on, don't be shy.
That should be about half the room.
Yeah.
People hiding, or no one would not move at all.
There are more of us, but in any case, Jessica, I think that we'd like to thank you for being such a phenomenal teacher all of these years. Come on, come on. Okay, they're emerging from the woodwork. I think there's no better way than to thank you for the impact you've had on our lives, our advocacy, our education as lawyers, than to kind of all come together and applaud your courage. You have single-handedly brought the case as far as it's gotten. It's been your vision, it's been your commitment, it's been your dedication to Leslie, Catherine, and Rebecca, and we've learned so much from the fierceness of your advocacy and have really benefited from it all, I think, as advocates in our own right. So, on behalf of all the clinic students, thank you so much.
I missed you guys so much.
Look at you, my brave one.
So Jessica did want to hear what some of you, if any of you had any other comments to make about the case and what you felt about it in terms of your work or life. I don't know if that's putting you too much on the spot. I see you running away. Obviously, you don't want to be in that particular spot, but any kind of comments about the experience along the way that you want to share?
I mean, I was very inspired by working with you. I mean, we have an amazing domestic violence case in my country.
Yeah.
But really,
Julie, would you mind speaking to the microphone? You won't speak to the microphone. What are you saying? There, Jessica will take you. You've always been in the main one as well, so this is good.
No. Tell me how. I guess from my kids, I just want to know how the process and this victory has affected your work and how it's been helpful to you, and that inspires me because somehow I just can't believe the sea of faces. Thank you. You honor me so much. I always speak, and I don't want to speak. I just want to say thank you for all the work you've done, and we couldn't have come this far without you all. And just thank you so much. You've heard me speak 1,000 times, so it's your turn to be brave for a minute.
I want to hear more.
It is explosive. I've got to say, I never, ever thought that the human rights that we were struggling and didn't know, that we doubted having any effect at all, would have this result. It's more than I could have ever dreamed or prayed for. And my mom, got to watch it come to fruition, and today is her birthday, and it's absolutely not a coincidence that today is a day of celebration in her memory. So it's double meaning for me, and it's a really nice balm to my heart right now to see you all. Thanks.
So I hope you all understood that this is a lifelong commitment that you've made. Jessica, we all know, right?
Now you've signed on, right, Peter?
They've signed on.
And thank you, Peter, for always standing by us. And Lenora, everybody, I must apologize ahead of time. I am crappy with names. I will always remember your face, but please help me remember your name. I just know that everybody has had such an invested efforts and time and tears and blood and sweat. I mean, how many blisters have you had running after my case on your feet? And how many nights did you not sleep? And that kind of support is just priceless, absolutely priceless. It's your turn. Okay, we can talk later, Shikra.
Would you like to say anything else in closing? Like a few few more words.
In closing, okay, if I must. No, I've been watching since August when the decision finally was able to be shared, and you can't imagine, I was just going bonkers for months with the idea that I had it in my hot little hand and I couldn't share it, and I was like, that was a really long 8 months. And I don't know how you all felt, but I sort of had to like pull away from the emotion of it and just be numb for a little while. That's why this video I thought was, I mean, thank God I have a really patient film crew that took 11 hours to answer 4 questions and really pushed me to that emotional level because I couldn't deal with it. But now that I see the results of where it's going and the impact, and people are occupying different locations in our states because of the work that we have done. And it doesn't necessarily mean DV, it could be children's rights, it could be reproductive rights, and all down the line, but the floodgates have been opened. And I feel that we've been very blessed in our system, in our process through the system, in getting it pushed through, and that I'd like to ask, I always will ask if you allow me, to let's think about how to help others navigate through the system without the benefits that we had as a team, because they're not going to have all of that. And yet it's not any less important for them to be heard and to be helped. And last but not least, I think my case was a success because of you, and there are going to be a lot more cases out there. And you know how quickly 15 minutes goes, and if we let these cases drop, like if any of us would have let the case drop, we wouldn't be here today. It really would have gone away in that 15 minutes. So I would ask that we pay attention to what is going in and out of this Outer Body Council, the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights. Who would have thought? I mean, 6 years ago I was going, yeah, what's that about? And do I really want to put myself on the line for no guarantees? Well, yeah, I could. What else do I have to do, right? So that is really my goal, and where I'm looking to continue is to want to participate in especially human rights coming about the indigenous peoples. That's my personal interest, but it's an overall all-encompassing issue for me, and life is going to change for all of us in so many ways, and I think it's not going to take all that long. So I am speechless for a change. How about that? I really am in awe. And thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you. We're holding this here at Columbia Law School, and the clinic has, as I mentioned, it's been able to take on this case. Most of you who know me as a professor know that I rarely say anything nice about Columbia Law School, except the work that we're doing. But I think perhaps I should pause for a moment to acknowledge that it has been the institutional support that has also helped us along the way, and that institutional support has extended to the University of Miami, and we're joined here by Patricia White, the Dean from the University of Miami, and the wonderful support that she has continued to give to Carrie, who, although she's left here, we don't really think of her as being gone, and so we're just going to adopt them all into our larger community. And with your engagement, I think we also keep this law school on the right course, because it's only through the publicly interested students being engaged and taking up the banner and saying this is what the school should stand for, that the school itself will follow. And so I want to thank you and encourage you to stay engaged, the lifelong commitment to Jessica and to the work that we have here, and I look forward to our continued collaboration into the future. So thanks very much, and thanks everybody.